Hi there, my name is Leanna Olbinski, and I was so inspired by the Giving Back campaign that I wanted to make my own version of giving back and maybe connect with the Skims team and possibly Kim Kardashian West to make my dreams come true of helping people that are struggling with addiction and have served time for those crimes they've committed. I lost my dad 2 years ago to addiction, but the truth is that it wasn't really the addiction that I lost him to. It was definitely the depression and the feeling of hopelessness. And I don't think anyone should ever feel that way. And my dad was a very honest and gentle and nice man, despite the crimes he committed under the influence. And he called me every day after he was released from prison, begging me to forgive him because he wanted to die. I don't want other people to have to experience this. And I also want kids that are like me to know that they will be okay, they can make it out okay. They don't have to follow in their parents' footsteps, that they deserve a happy life, and that it's not that their parents didn't love them, it's just that their parents were sick. So I wrote a letter to Kim Kardashian after watching the episode where she is helping people with prison reform. And I thought I'd read that now. It's kind of long, but I'm hoping you can help me connect with Kim because I'm currently writing a book, and this book will be all of my dad's letters to me while he was in prison. My dad wrote to me every week and I would write back. And so I have all of his deepest fears, all of his hopes, all of his memories, and all of his thoughts about his mistakes. And I really think this can change a lot of people's lives. So with the help of Kim, I think it ties really beautifully into what she's doing with prison reform. She can help me make this book what it's supposed to be. Here is my letter, and by the way, I am wearing Skims. Dear Miss Kim Kardashian West, thank you for the work that you are doing with prison reform. My dad passed away in 2017, only 2 years after being released from a 5-year sentence. The reason I'm writing to you is to tell you a little about my dad, our relationship, and how prison affected our lives. I've saved over 50 of the letters he sent me, and I'd love to spread the message of how being in prison really can affect people's mental health. I'm sure there are so many dads and moms in prison struggling with guilt and regret, like mine did, and I'm so inspired that you are taking action to help. I want to help too. My dad was my best friend. We had 7 amazing years together where he was sober, and in those 7 years I learned all that I needed to know about being selfless but tough, being kind to those who need it most, not just those who are kind back, and being a good person, starting from the inside out. We bonded on shopping trips, going to museums, music, a hunger for adventure and knowledge. When I turned 14, my grandma was in stage 3 cancer, and my dad relapsed and traded spending his days of working with spending his days in the streets, and his nights of helping me with homework or being my softball coach with being locked in our spare bedroom surrounded by burnt tin foil. When he went to prison, to be honest, I was happy. Crack cocaine made my dad a dangerous man, and he was paranoid. When my dad got out, he was the most muscular I had ever seen him in his life. He was was my teddy bear again. Unfortunately, my grandma passed away only a few weeks later, and my dad relapsed. This time, instead of tinfoil, I found needles in the back seat of our car. Instead of being paranoid or erratic, he was a zombie. And to note, during these years, we still found memories that bonded us together. In moments of sobriety that last 2 to 3 days, I'd read him my journal of how sad his addiction made me, and we would cry together, and he would apologize with a desperate look in his eyes. They were honest, and they were begging for help. And when he was home, he always found a way to provide for us. I went to school with food in my stomach, nice clothes on my back, and a warm home to go home to. However, with his record and his struggle, it was hard for him to make an honest living. In 2010, he was arrested again for a crime he committed under the influence in 2007. My dad's crime was bad, yes. I was 17 when my dad was arrested. The undercover cops, the state troopers, and the local police showed up to our front door. My dad was sober, and him and I were watching Kung Fu Panda. It was his favorite movie. I was confused and angry. Why now? My dad was sober. My entire senior year, I'd wake up on Tuesdays at 5 a.m., drive 2 hours, and sit in court to try and hear the words that they had made a mistake and that my dad was coming home. But that turned into 5 years of waiting, 4 years in prison, and 1 year in ICE. In those 4 years, I graduated high school, graduated college, and began working full-time in an office. That killed my dad. He hated missing milestones in my life. He hated that he couldn't provide for me, and that he had to wait for me to make enough money in college to pay $50 so that he could call me to only talk for 20 minutes. He missed the years I grew into a woman. We wrote each other each week like this about our memories and how when he would be released, we'd rule the world. I fought hard to get him out of prison, and when he was released, it wasn't a fairy tale that we planned out for 5 years in our letters. When my dad was released in 2015, I was working 3 jobs. I was waitressing at night, working at a PR firm, and assisting in building a fitness app in my other hours. My dad couldn't find a single job. In those 5 years, my dad kept a big secret from me. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He couldn't take a labor-intensive job. He applied to be an Uber driver, but with his record, he was denied. It really did infuriate him that he couldn't provide for me. He wanted to make up for lost years, and any time he got a paycheck from the government, he would buy me jewelry. It made me sad because I know he needed the satisfaction of working and providing to feel reintegrated, and I didn't know how to help. It made his days long and boring, and almost a bit upset at me for spending all my time working. He'd call me 20 times a day while I was at work and took it to heart when I didn't answer and chose work over him. It broke my heart, and all I wanted to do was drop everything to be with him, but I simply couldn't. I had to support myself. My dad had anxiety for the first time in his life after those 5 years. My dad never had a problem singing in public or embarrassing me by saying something in public loud. I admired that. But from the day he was released, he was timid. He looked around at others, and when I introduced him proudly to my coworkers, he told me he was embarrassed, ashamed, and scared of what people thought of him. That killed me. I had grown into a confident, no-shame person, just like him. And I was so excited in a sense to take over the world with our electric adventures. But while I strengthened my social skills, my dad had forgotten his. We knew it wouldn't be a perfect fairy tale after all, but I never thought, only 2 years after his release, that he'd be gone. He died with almost every drug in his system, but from the time he was released to the time he died, I didn't care about his addiction at all. It was his mental health that killed him. He died with no confidence, no feeling of purpose, and no hope. He had all the love in the world till the day he died. The last 2 conversations we had, he was even getting excited about the ideas of what I could be one day. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get him to see all he was and all that he could do and all that he could be. He died 6 foot 2 inches, under 150 pounds. He was sick and couldn't get help for himself. But further than that, the label convict, criminal, druggie, and failure to society were labels he wore heavy on his chest, even though he was so much more. He was the best dad in the world, and he made me a strong, passionate, honest, and caring person. All I do for him. I hope you know, Miss Kardashian West, that your efforts will have a ripple effect on so many lives. Just an ounce of hope and a pinch of purpose from someone else can change a person's life who is struggling to find their way. Every person you help with your initiative makes my heart fuller, and I think of what my dad would do. So I'll end this note with exactly how I think he'd react if he received your support. First of all, he'd laugh so hard, high-five me, give me a huge hug, and tell me he loved me. Then he'd turn to you, tell you how beautiful you are, and immediately apologize to Mr. West and break out in song, probably Jesus Walks. Then he'd stand up straight, he'd thank you, and it'd make you feel the gratitude. He would truly be humbled and grateful forever. I know you're giving that feeling to so many other people, so thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and from my dad.